Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell is publicly denouncing a newly elected member of his own party. That is Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. In a statement, McConnell wrote, "Loony lies and conspiracy theories are cancer for the Republican Party and our country." Though he did not mention the Georgia lawmaker by name, McConnell did, however, make reference to a handful of conspiracy theories that Greene has publicized in the past. This explicit condemnation from the minority leader adds to the mounting pressure House Republicans already face to take action against Taylor Greene, who herself is claiming renewed support from former President Donald Trump. For more on this, let's bring in Kris Van Cleave from the Hill, from his house, actually. So, Kris, let me ask you about this. House Democrats are pushing a measure to strip Congresswoman Greene of her post on the House Education and Budget Committee. It's a dangerous precedent, some have said, because if the Republicans gain control of the House during the midterm elections, then what's to stop them from doing the same thing with a congressperson that they don't like or that they think deserves to be stripped of those committee assignments? But the real question, I guess, is the Republicans are dealing with two issues here. One, whether to move a staunch Republican, one who has been one for many years, Liz Cheney, from her leadership position, and two, what to do about Marjorie Taylor Greene. So what are you hearing about how this could go this week?
Well, certainly when you have the minority leader in the Senate, Mitch McConnell, wading into House affairs, it's not something he does very often. It is a significant statement. He has also come out with a statement in support of Liz Cheney. So what you're watching play out here is sort of the rift that is growing inside the Republican Party. You have, on some level, Trump supporters in Congress who are very angry at Liz Cheney, not only for her vote to impeach the president, but her statement about why she did it, which became a Democratic talking point, and that certainly didn't sit well with many members in the House. You also have what to do with Representative Greene. And, some of the concern there is many of the things that have become controversial with her in the last couple of weeks are statements or comments or actions before she was a member of Congress. And that perhaps is why the move that the Democrats are considering to try to push a floor vote to strip her of her committee assignments is so unusual. Because one, it would set a precedent where if there's somebody that's done something even before they were in Congress, you could use that as a justification to remove them from a committee, and it's an unusual move. And even Representative Greene pointed out that if Democrats do this to her, they should expect the same treatment whenever the Republicans are in the majority, and that could be as soon as 2022. So if you're Kevin McCarthy, who wants his caucus focused on the Biden-Harris agenda and focused on trying to win the majority in 2022, lots of infighting isn't good. So, he's facing pressure to do something about Greene. He's also facing pressure to try to get the caucus past the Liz Cheney situation. Now, tomorrow, the House GOP will have their weekly meeting. That's where we expect perhaps 100 or more members of the House Republicans to push a resolution internally to remove Liz Cheney from her leadership post inside the Republican Party in the House. That then gets referred to a committee. They actually have to give that resolution to Liz Cheney because of her leadership position. She then would refer it to a committee. It then sort of gets into arcane parliamentary actions. But this could be a quick thing where that committee decides, makes an unfavorable recommendation that essentially ends it. I think Speaker Leader McCarthy, is looking for this to be a session for members to vent and express their frustration, for Liz Cheney to listen, and to try to move on from that controversy. Marjorie Taylor Greene is another controversy that he's got to figure out how to juggle. He's under a lot of pressure to do something, and Democrats have basically said you have 72 hours to remove her from her committee assignments, particularly the Education Committee, given that she has been a bit of a conspiracy theorist and a school shooting denier. They would like to see her off those committees, and if that doesn't happen, you very well may see Democrats take this to the floor. There's also a long shot bid that we expect to be introduced later this week to expel her from Congress, that would require 2/3 of the House of Representatives to vote for it. So that's highly unlikely to happen. The removing her from her committee positions, we understand that's just a simple majority. The Democrats could do that without any Republican support.
So in the meantime, there's actual, real work to be done, legislating that needs to be done. A group of Republican senators hoping to negotiate with President Biden on a new round of coronavirus relief unveiled details of their own proposal yesterday. So give us a sense of what the differences are, if there's, a possibility for compromise here. I mean, based on the vast difference in the price tag, I would think that this is just an opening conversation and, that we're at the beginning of the process as opposed to the end of it.
Yeah, Marie, they're a mere $1.3 trillion apart right now. So, there's a lot of ground, a lot of difference here. And Republicans, as you heard Weijia say, left that meeting feeling like they were listened to and feeling pretty optimistic, but everybody agreeing that it was a first meeting. There's a lot of ground where they don't agree. I made a quick list here where there is agreement. It's on money for vaccination, for expanding testing, for disaster fund, food assistance, and child care. Where there is not agreement, unemployment benefits, though the federal extra money, $300 runs out, $300 weekly runs out the middle of March. Republicans support extending that $300 at least through September. Democrats want to do $400 through the end of the year. So that's a difference. When you get to the stimulus checks, you've Bernie Sanders, who's the chair of the Budget Committee in the Senate. His reconciliation measure that he's going to introduce today is $2,000 stimulus payments. The White House is okay with $1,400. The GOP would like $1,000, and they would like it to lower income levels than what Democrats are calling for. School reopening, all of this talk, you hear from Republicans a lot about reopening the schools. They only want to contribute about $20 billion to that. Democrats want $170 billion. The biggest point of difference here, and there really are two. One is the minimum wage, which Democrats want raised to $15 an hour. Republicans want to know why that's even in the bill. And then $350 billion for state and local aid. Democrats want to help states and cities that have been particularly hard hit because of the pandemic, as well as transit agencies, those public-private sort of things that communities rely on but have really suffered. And there just isn't much support for that amongst Republicans.
Kris, let me ask you about this. Over the weekend, over 100 Democratic lawmakers led by the Congressional Hispanic Caucus sent a letter to House Speaker Nancy Pelosi pushing for a path of citizenship for undocumented essential workers in the COVID-19 budget reconciliation package. What more can you tell us about this?
Yeah, so if they go through reconciliation, the measures here, and it's sort of an arcane, wonky political tool to passing a budget, it has to deal with revenue, direct budget money items. So it's possible trying to add in a path to citizenship could get challenged and end up having to be stripped out of the bill by the time it gets to the Senate. So that it has some hurdles just to make it into a reconciliation bill to see if you could argue that that's a revenue-related item. But basically, what they would like to see is a path to citizenship for essential workers, for dreamers, and for immigrants that are in the U.S. under temporary protected status, or TPS. They estimate that's about 5 million people. Republicans are pretty skeptical of a path to citizenship, so if you were going to try to pass it, if you could get it into a reconciliation bill that's going to go 51 votes, all Democrats, that would be a way to do immigration reform. Immigration reform is hard. You've had president after president, Congress after Congress talk about wanting to do an immigration reform bill, and we're still talking about it years later. So it's a high bar, but certainly something to watch.
Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez held an Instagram last night, and she talked about what it was like on January 6th when that mob descended on the Capitol building. It was really emotional. She sort of almost acted out how she was hiding out. And she also disclosed for the first time that she had been a sexual assault survivor. And she talked about how some lawmakers after January 6th, the way they have been sort of talking about getting past that day and, looking to unity and without sort of acknowledging what happened there was in many ways reminded her of how sexual assault survivors are treated as well. There's been a lot of talk about the need for heightened security for lawmakers across the board, but in particular, certain lawmakers are particularly threatened. Any news on that front?
Yeah, you know, certainly it was a very powerful Instagram Live, and you had Representative Katie Porter talking last night afterwards, saying that she gave AOC a pair of sneakers in the event she had to literally run for her life. So you get a sense for just how traumatizing January 6th was for members of Congress. And it's important to note, it's not just members of Congress. There were congressional staffers who were hiding behind barricaded doors and under tables. You have all of the people who work at the Capitol, who don't work for a member of Congress, or but are there in a support capacity, or they work in the restaurants, or they maintenance folks. All of those people who were witness to what was a really traumatic day. I mean, it was jarring, and I was outside of the Capitol covering what was going on the West Lawn. So you have a lot of people still struggling to kind of process and come to terms with what they witnessed that day, and you have you continue to hear intelligence reports about potential threats. Threats against members of Congress. Speaker Nancy Pelosi has said that they're probably going to have to look for more money for member security. Members have been told they can tap into their campaign funds to pay for security. Threats are coming into members and their families. So there is a lot of concern right now on the Hill. You have seen the fencing that surrounds the Capitol and the National Guard. They're going to stay there probably through at least part of March as the Senate moves through impeachment. And then there are measures looking at how do you improve security, and it is an ongoing conversation and one of high concern, certainly for the members of Congress.
Yeah, it was really something hearing her retell the situation. I think that, you know, often we cover it as a news story, and it's about, you know, who's getting arrested and sort of shocking video. But, you know, she was truly terrified, and some members of the mob came very, very close to her and her staff member. So, yeah, it was really something to listen to. Kris, thank you so much.